Welcome to the Home Building Hub, your essential podcast guide to building your new home. Hosted by industry experts Colin and Darren Brennan, this conversational podcast will help better educate you about all things new home building so you can avoid costly mistakes and enjoy your building experience to the fullest, no matter which home builder you choose.
Hey there folks, it's Colin here from the Home Building Hub and sitting here with co-host Darren Brennan. And today we've got an episode, a very interesting one, talking about, why prices could go up in 2023 and how your home designs will change and the impact of some of the changes that are coming into our industry this year. We're going to give you an insight into those, talk you through them, and we will better equip you for the decision that you want to make, either proceeding now or a little bit down the track. Before we kick off, Darren, firstly, how are you going, mate? You good?
Going great, mate. Going great. Obviously,
well.
It's been awesome to have kicked the podcast off and go live in the last 24 hours. So that's been fantastic, and obviously been some great feedback from people around the industry and friends and colleagues and whatever else through the social channels, which has been great. And I think we might have nearly cracked 50 downloads on the podcast already in 24 hours, which I think probably exceeded our expectations, mate, which is awesome.
Well, that's true. I don't have 50 family members that I could name, so I think we've got at least a few industry people in there, and hopefully some clients who are looking to learn a little bit from it. So it's good. Yeah, we got it out there. So at the time of recording this, we did release this week our first couple of episodes, and we're pretty pumped to see the feedback coming through. And we'll continue to do so and release an episode every week for you. So, yeah, we're pretty excited, aren't we?
Absolutely, mate. No, it's awesome.
Beautiful. Well, what I might do, for those who listening to this episode for the first time, you don't know who we are. My name's Colin Bishop. I'm a GM or General Manager of a company called H&L Victoria. We do premium turnkey homes. And I've essentially been in the industry for over 10 years, starting as a sales consultant, going up through the ranks from state level and a national level, across a few different builders and across a couple of different states. So I've seen lots of different things, a lot of structure, process, system, and a lot of experience across different facets. So that's my really short rundown. Darren, what about yourself?
Yeah, so currently work for Metricon Homes as a regional sales manager looking after Regional West. Likewise, been in the industry a long time now, Colin, 16 or 17 years now. Had, like yourself, a range of different roles across a number of different builders over that journey and had a great old time. But I've spent all my time in the front end of the business, at the driving the sales end of the business, which has been great. So that's pretty much where I'm at. But yeah, obviously hoping we've brought a fair bit of experience to the table. And I think we said in our introductory podcast, Colin, that where we don't have the experience, we've got some of the greatest connections in the industry that we'll be able to bring to the table to fill any gaps that we've got there in knowledge that we can't help the listeners out on. So we're looking forward to some great people on the podcast over the journey as well. So it's going to be good.
Yep. And lastly to that, we just add that this is an independent podcast. So we're not here to talk about our respective businesses. We're here just to provide value to prospective home buyers. It's as simple as that. So there'll be no sales pitches. It'll just be value, education, insights, and anything we can do to help you better understand the complexities of the journey that is new home building. Okay, so Daz, maybe do you want to kick off the intro for what we're going to cover in this episode, the fee it is to listen, and go from there?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So I guess the big change that you're talking about, Colin, that's coming, and it's probably one of the largest changes to the building code that we've seen since the early 2000s, which is the introduction of 7-star ratings to homes, so moving from 6 to 7-star, and also livable housing, I guess, is the common term for it. So it's changes to the home structurally to become more compliant with the use of wheelchairs and the like, and I guess more disabled friendly, or more heading in that direction, I guess. So certainly some big changes that are on the line there. And the other one that's in line there, which is probably less relevant in some states than others, so certainly less relevant, for example, in Victoria, and has been, probably well covered by builders anyway, is the condensation management requirements as well that are getting changed in that code. And it is a national approach, which is great. So probably talk just because we're somewhat biased to Victoria, but it is a national approach, and they're slightly different, those national requirements. But we'll run through the information that we've got here today to really hopefully enlighten the listener.
And the fee to listen to the podcast is?
Absolutely. So we've got a fee. It's, if you like the podcast, please share it. They'd be doing us a great favour. We really appreciate that. Likewise, if you get an opportunity and you have got value out of the podcast, leave us a 5-star review. We'd really love to see ourselves become certainly more popular in the space that we're hitting a greater audience and being able to provide greater value to more people. So, yeah, like us for sure. Share the podcast, and we'd be going a long way to thanking you for doing so.
Yeah, great. Okay, so to break this up today, Darren's going to talk a bit about the energy rating changes, and then I'll cover the livable housing or accessible living changes, and we'll just wrap that up from there. So you can kick off, Daz. Go for it.
Yeah, I'm going to kick it off actually with our disclaimer, Cole, so we don't want to miss that bit as well. So we do have to read out a disclaimer every time we do the podcast, which is, whilst we are about providing you with value, this podcast should not be considered as legal or financial advice. It contains general information only, and you should seek independent professional advice on your personal situation before making any legal or financial decisions. So we do our best to make sure that every bit of information we're providing here is relevant to you, but you need to find out whether it's specifically relevant back to your own circumstances. So great. Well, I'm going to have a quick chat about energy rating. And so obviously, as I mentioned in the start, what are the changes coming into place? And that is that we're moving from 6 stars energy rating up to 7-star energy rating. And that was a decision certainly in Victoria made in August 2022 to increase the minimum energy efficiency building standards for all new homes. And under that, that falls under the National Construction Code for 2022. So that's that broader national figure. The energy efficient homes obviously are more comfortable to live in. So, there's certainly benefits there. They cost less to heat and cool. Again, great benefit for your hip pocket, and particularly in times like now, and also help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So it's a significant impact on the environment. And obviously we can tell through, everything that's going on out there right now. That's a massive part of people's consideration to life in general. So I think there's some real positives out of that. But obviously that comes at a cost. So we'll obviously touch on that a little bit more too. So the general changes, I guess, is it's a whole of house approach, which hasn't happened before. And what that means is that it's including things such as your appliances are now taken into consideration. So, your cooktop, your oven, etc., are all sort of bundled into this total energy rating number that they're trying to keep you at or below. Your heating and cooling units likewise involved in that, hot water service, lighting, and where pools, if you've got a pool on your home where that's applicable, then the cost of running your pool pumps, etc., will be assessed. Again, part of this is to make the house cheaper to run. So hopefully helping your hip pocket, and again, more comfortable to live in as a general rule. So, certainly under the current 6-star, the realm, I guess, has been to have homes sitting at a level between 18 and 26 degrees. And that's seen as a really comfortable level for people to live in. This is not dissimilar to that, but it's taking it to the next level. So it's just maintaining a greater number of hours in a day that you don't need to turn your heating and cooling system on to be driving an energy cost, and therefore the environmental impact of that, etc. And again, there's pressures right now on the energy grid, and we know that they're coming up with obviously shutting down of the coal plants, etc. And there's fear around all where that goes. This is all helping that cause. So this is taking less pressure on the energy grid, whether that be through gas or electricity as a whole. So I think there's certainly some real positives there. I guess, how do these impact pricing and floor plans, etc., moving forward? And there's three I guess, key things to consider. Number one, the design and build of the home. You'll need to have a minimum thermal performance. So this is talking about the energy rating part of 7 stars. And that's going to require a combination of the orientation of the home. So you're going to have to get the house orientated in the most energy efficient orientation. And that's generally living areas facing towards the north, right? As a general sort of rule. You're going to need high performance windows potentially, so double glazing or low E glazing of your windows. And again, it may not require that to all windows, but it may well require it to all windows. So it's going to be that juggle. And again, it's going to depend on the orientation of the home and the design of the home and how big the home is, etc. It's also going to potentially impact the size of those windows. So, if you're wanting to have massive windows on your home, you may not be able to get the home to rate to 7 stars. So again, there's going to have to be some serious consideration around that. Floor, ceiling, and wall insulation also upgrades to that. So you're going to see significant upgrades there, and that will include mid-floor insulation on double stories potentially, and also internal wall insulation within the home itself, which is often not required and not done. So, there's significant changes and upgrades that are going to be required. I'd be suggesting most homes will, as a standard, head towards either double glazing or low E glazing to try and meet that requirement, and that'll be one of the big kickoffs. And most homes will have their ceiling and wall insulation beefed up significantly. And again, these things are adding cost to the build. I guess there'll be also some stuff like what are the external walls of the home built out of? For the most part, homes are built of brick, but again, there'll be some consideration around what does that look like? Is that the most energy efficient? I know places like Hebel are now looking to get an R rating, which is a energy rating on their Hebel bricks, to try and Hebel, for those that don't know what that is, it's a lightweight concrete, and it's a replacement for brick essentially. But they're looking to try and get an R rating, for example, on their product, so that it'll again add to the energy efficiency. And the other part with that design and build will be there may be a need, depending on how that rolls out, to go to a blower door test, which is basically putting a big fan on the front door of the home and blowing the house up like a balloon and seeing where the air leaks from. And that leakage of air, trying to seal off as much of that as possible. And there's some requirements because you still have to have some airflow into the home. So there's still some requirements there. And they'll pump air in and pull air out to try and see where there are some shortfalls in that. And there may be builders that need to go to that to try and get the home up to that star rating of 7. So it's going to be certainly challenging. And again, that may mean that there'll be some designs that just will never comply and won't be able to be built anymore. So yeah, that's number one. Number two, you're going to have to choose energy efficient appliances. So they'll now start to rate your appliances. That includes the heating and cooling units. So you may need to upgrade to from a 3 to a 4 or a 5-star heating unit. Your cooling units, and again, what that looks like. Hot water services, they'll be putting a rating against those. Kitchen appliances. Your lighting. So again, if you want to have 5,000 downlights in your home, you may not be able to do that because, again, they're generating a drawdown of energy and they're trying to offset that. Pool pumps, as I mentioned earlier, and pool heaters as well, if you've got those installed at the time of getting your energy rating done. And that'll give a total efficiency rating. And again, that number then can be offset by number 3, which is the use of renewable energy. So homes will need to install a rooftop solar PV system, and that's your traditional solar system that people are seeing on the roofs of people's homes generating electricity to help offset the remaining energy usage. So again, if you put in more downlights or a bigger heating unit, you may need to put in a bigger PV system to offset that number to get that energy efficiency rating down. And so most builders don't include a PV system. Some do, but most don't include that rooftop solar system on the home. So again, that's going to be an additional cost to the home to have that installed. You don't have to include the use of a battery, but again, there's some considerations around where that sits. So from a 7-star energy efficiency point of view, you can tell there's quite a bit to be to be considered and potentially added to the cost of the build. And that's where there's real positives, because you're going to have a much more energy efficient home, less impact on the environment, less cost of your bills, but it's going to come at a significant cost of your building contract. So, yeah, thoughts on all that, Colin?
No, it's good. Well said, well explained. I think the only addition I would add is that a lot of builders are still trying to work through how they best deal with these requirements so that they can rate their home to a 7-star level. In addition to the part I'm about to talk about, accessible living or livable housing, builders are not necessarily. I guess everything hasn't necessarily been finalised, so there's still a lot of questions out there. So we're presenting what we know to date, and some of these things may change. Not every builder will put every suggestion Darren's mentioned. Some will, some won't. Basically, they've got to sit down and work out themselves how they're going to get to the 7-star. So I guess that leads into the next one. Livable housing is the other component here as part of these requirements, which are due to come out this year. So as far as livable housing, I guess why are these changes coming into place? So livable housing refers to essentially, I'll get into the detail, but making houses more user-friendly for the elderly and for people who need wheelchair access. Okay, so that's essentially it. But let's say in theory, you say, okay, someone moves into them, they buy a new home and they're in their 40s, for example, now. And, 20, 30 years go by and they love the area, they love their home, they don't want to leave. Essentially, builders are going to need to put in provisions for people who, as they grow into their older years, where they've got provisions in the walls for grab rails and things like that. So they're essentially future-proofing it. So as you grow through those years, you're essentially in a position where you can stay in your house. And that's one of the aspects or angles you could look at. And then the other one, obviously, with wheelchair access, enabling people to not necessarily have specifically built homes, but at least one section of the home where someone with a wheelchair can access the house and access a bathroom or an ensuite, etc. Nice and easy, and it's got enough space in front of toilets and so on for them. So builders will need to adapt designs accordingly based on those requirements. So hopefully that explains a general intro to it. So some of the points, and I'm just going to read off those. There's some points here that are pretty clear. So one continuous path with a step-free entrance is one requirement, Darren. So that means that it can be through the front door, it can be through the garage entry, and each builder, again, they're going to have to work out, well, what's best for us, how we're going to best design our homes accordingly. So I think that at this stage, most are going to go through the garage, and they might lift the garage concrete level up a little bit, and they may put a little ramp in just to make it accessible, but to be confirmed. So that's one. So obviously wheelchair access is easy. And then basically, I guess in general, entrance door a lot of the internal doors will require wider doorways. So normally we have let's say an 820mm door, but now we're going to need an 820mm opening, which means you probably need about an 870mm wide door for all those habitable rooms, laundries and toilets, and at least one room with a shower. So again, builders are going to have to look at their floor plans and go, do we make this the bathroom? Do we make it the ensuite, etc.? Okay, so in addition to that, it's not just the doorways, but it's also the corridors and the hallways. And a lot of entrance hallways in homes, they already have probably a metre plus, Darren, but there are some of those little zigzaggy back corridor sections that kick off to a bathroom, for example, where they don't have necessarily a metre. They might have 900mm. So that would need to be changed as well. You need to have 1 metre clearance from wall to wall for those things. So in addition to that, like toilet doors, you need the 820 opening and 900mm clearance between the walls and things like that. But one of the things with the toilet is you need what they're calling a circulation space. And that distance will need to be from the front of the toilet, I think they refer to it as the pan, to the space in front of a toilet needs to be 1200mm. And that's something that I guess it's probably easier to achieve in an ensuite, and that's where you'll see most builders probably go and apply that. Cavity sliding door to the ensuite and the toilet access or that circulation space will be in there. So that's one thing. And then the last thing I'll probably note is the reinforcement of at frame stage, most logically. They will put in the reinforcement or noggings into the wall for the provision for future installation of grab rails. And that'll be around showers and toilets. And if it's in the bathroom as the area they're choosing, it will be in with the bath as well. Okay, so there's still some, I guess, builders out there trying to work out how they're going to make this happen. But if you look at it from, how it's going to impact the floor plans. So first I'll say these are good changes. Just like the 7-star, these are good changes. They're in for a good reason. The question is how will these changes impact pricing and designs? When Darren mentioned the energy rating stuff, that's definitely going to impact pricing. With the accessible or livable housing, it will impact pricing a bit, but probably not as significantly. It's more about the impact on the designs. Okay, so it will change designs at, let's say, 22 square marginally. We'll probably be able to accommodate, grab our normal plan and tweak it with the wider doors, wider hallways. Won't have as much of an impact on a 22 square home. But anything that's smaller than that, it certainly will have an impact. And a lot of our homes, based on, pricing at the moment, first home buyers and so on, getting into the market, smaller blocks and smaller houses are very popular. So those houses are going to be very much impacted. Okay, so just think, if you've got bedroom doors are often 820 wide, and some of the wet areas might be 720. So for each door, we're going to have to increase between 50 to 100 mil of space, 50 to 150 mil of space, times that by 3 or 4 doors, and all of a sudden you've chipped away at losing a fair bit of space in bedrooms. And in the smaller homes, you're actually probably in a point now where you have to take one bedroom out. Okay, so that's the impact of these changes, factoring in adding the hallway width and the space in front of the toilet and those sorts of things. That will definitely have an impact on the size of bedrooms and potentially the number of bedrooms in designs that you can get, I guess, approved and compliant on blocks moving forward. So it's definitely something to consider. So that's probably a rundown for you, Daz. Anything else you want to add?
The one I was, and I probably should have picked up on in our notes before, but I didn't spot it, but is the flat transition into a shower as well, Colin, on one shower for the home? I don't know if you mentioned
correct,
that one.
Yeah. I don't think I did, but yeah, 0 step. There's got to be. You're allowed to have a 5 mil tolerance.
Yep.
But yeah, one shower has to be 0 steps. So in theory, an ensuite will change to a wider opening, space in front of the toilet, a 0 step shower, and provisions for grab rails in there. Essentially, if the ensuite's the choice. Some builders may say, I want to do all doors, to comply and things like. It's left to a little bit of discretion to be made by each builder. Yeah.
I think also, my father ended up in a wheelchair, and the difficulties that provided for their home wasn't ideal. They had a big ramp in their garage, so they accessed the home from the garage, but they had to get a big ramp built that was at the right angle so that he could roll his wheelchair up the hill into the home. Then he had to so he was entering through their study into the home. So again, it was not a great outcome, particularly on that design of house. Then he could only use one of the bathrooms because the ensuite was too small for him to get his wheelchair into. So, there certainly comes with challenges, and so getting this stuff right, I understand completely why they're heading down this path, and I've had firsthand experience of that. But at the same token, the offset of that is the challenge, isn't it, really? That the consideration, particularly on smaller lots, and the fact that it's been forced on every home is a challenge, and I certainly appreciate the reasons for it because, as I say, experienced that firsthand. But it's not going to be necessarily a great outcome every time. So it's got its challenges.
Yeah. So, Des, do you want to cover when are these changes proposed? And we'll repeat, they're proposed to come into effect.
Yeah, so again, each state's different. Their dates of kickoff, I guess, for it. And Victoria has one of the last kickoff dates. So obviously we both operate currently in Victoria. I know New South Wales is going ahead sooner than Victoria, and it looks like there's some delays in South Australia. Queensland's pretty similar to us. But that's kicking off as of the 1st of October. So it's going to come around pretty quick. And that's 1st of October this year, 2023. I guess, so based on that, it's essentially being able to show your building surveyor that your plans and quotations were prepared and finalised pre-October 1. And again, that's going to vary from building surveyor to building surveyor, depending on how they interpret that regulation. And so there's a level of interpretation required. So from what I'm understanding, for some builders, it'll be as long as you've paid that initial deposit prior to that date, that you're going to be in the right position. But there's again some grey area in that right now, and that will come further to light exactly how that's going to roll out. But I know, Colin, you feel slightly different on how that rolls out exactly. So there's this bit of, I guess grey there, but certainly 1st of October is the date. Again, this could be in the format of, I guess, what we call sales accept. So you've paid a builder a deposit and they've now accepted that deposit and the paperwork that goes with that file's been sort of heading towards a building contract. Site plans being drawn and there's a bit of, we've got a bit of meat there to work with as a builder. It could mean a contract signed, although that's not what I believe. But again, there's a bit of grey area there. Obviously, there's different ways in which different builders operate. So again, if you've got a preferred builder in mind, chat to them about it. Bring it to the table. They may not be talking about it, and I'm not seeing a lot of builders talking about it yet. I don't think it's risen to the top of the list of things to be talked about yet, but I think it should be right up there right now. It's going to come around really fast, and you may well get caught out if you're not across that. I guess if you want to be 100% sure if you've signed a building contract, then you're in a pretty strong position to think that you're going to be safe. So certainly, get ahead of the curve on that. And as we've seen previously, what we're not wanting to see is this massive rush at the end that causes the bottlenecks, the headaches, etc. You have some control over that as a consumer as well to actually start that conversation. If you want to act before this comes into place, and you may choose not to, you may be wanting to take up some of the new requirements, and there's some real benefits for them. So, but if you're wanting to act before that because of the cost implications, then it might be better to be talking to your builder now and getting ahead of the curve on that. So, yeah.
Yeah, agree. So I think what we wanted to do here is, because we don't want to push you as a listener or as a potential home buyer one way or the other. There's benefits to sticking with it and putting in the new 7-star and the livable housing changes. There's benefits there, as Darren explained as well. But for those who, I guess, are sitting there working out what's more advantageous to themselves, we thought we'd leave you with the following questions. And just before I do, your CEO, Daz, was on A Current Affair last night as we record this. It might be a week and a little bit from here before we release it. And he was talking about this very topic and essentially just pushing for the potential of maybe delaying the release of these these codes being released. So at this point, as we know, as it stands, the 1st of October is when these requirements come into play. And just so you know, for a builder, obviously it's quite a tough time for builders. They're still getting through the process of the last 18, 24 months and really pushing through. And there's still hemorrhaging a little bit. Some builders struggling to get through, and making sure that we get them to trade through this period is probably more important, in my opinion, than implementing new code requirements this year. So that there may be an opportunity for it to be pushed back. We're just saying that we, as of what we know today, that they are coming into place. And the impact, as I was going to say, on builders is that they have to redesign all their home designs. So there's masters and there's this thing called BOQs. They're going to have to go through all those and redo that. And that is not a small expense. So I'm in total agreement with the CEO of Where You Are at Metricon, Daz, who had the opportunity on A Current Affair to talk about something which was great, because it was somewhat positive just to say, hey, here's what we think would be good. And that would, obviously the media hasn't said much positive about our industry lately. So I thought that was nice to see and in agreement with him. So what I'd say to finish up here is a couple of questions for you to work out for yourself. Home designs will incur significant cost increase. That will depend on the builder, but it might be 10 or 15 or 20K. And so you've got to ask yourself, will the changes required for 7-star and livable housing increase the future sale price of your home accordingly? Yes or no? And if you're a fan of those environmental and social, the impact of the changes, then hold off. But if you think that they're not going to make a difference to your rental or your sale price, then perhaps maybe now's the time to get in before the requirements come into play. The second one would be, obviously, we know there's uncertainty around interest rates. It's getting a little bit clearer, which is nice, but some people are still holding back until they find out for sure about interest rates. So the question you've got to ask yourself is, will the interest rates bear a greater cost than the changes themselves of 7-star and livable housing? The way it looks, probably not. And the other thing is the number of bedrooms, I guess the bedrooms and the bedroom sizes are going to be reduced, as we've explained, because of the hallway and the door width requirements and things like that. So it's really going to force builders to redesign plans and completely remove a lot of their small lot plans, or maybe a 3-bedder becomes a 2-bedder, or a 4-bedder becomes a 3-bedder, etc. So I guess the question in that respect is, would proceeding with a home design now before the cutoff rather than after the cutoff increase your ability to get, again, more rent or a better sale price? Okay, so people out there looking for 4 beds instead of 3 beds, if you think that's the case, then you should probably get in sooner rather than later. But if you think that people are looking for, and there will be these people too, 7-star energy rating and accessible or livable housing, that will appeal to some people, then hold back and wait till the requirements come through. So that's probably, and then only one more is for the people who own a block of land right now, you've already got one, or the people who are about to sort of go forward with one. These can impact the designs that you think you can fit on your block are now going to potentially be impacted if you don't move forward sooner. If you choose to hold back, that's okay, but just be mindful that the design options, maybe you'll have 3-bed available rather than a 4, etc. Just keep that in mind and make your choice accordingly. You've got to factor in orientation now is going to be significantly impacting that as well. So just some tips, Darren, or more questions for people to ask themselves. And again, I don't want to push them one way or the other, but we thought that would be helpful. Ask those questions of yourselves and your friends and your family, your relatives, whatever it may be, and then that will help guide you to the decision you need to make that benefits you. So do you have a couple of tips there to finish off there, Daz?
For sure. And I think on that orientation one, Colin, I think what it will do in the future is mean that you're going to have to consult your builder before you buy a block of land, because you just don't want to get caught with a block that you can't find a design at any stage that will actually work on it. So there's going to be certainly some challenges in that. And it's going to be challenging for builders to work out, is that design actually going to comply and how's that going to work? So it's certainly, there's real positives, but it's going to be a challenging time once these regulations come in around that as well. So, it's going to be require upskilling of the likes of ourselves to make sure that we're right across that and they're giving the right advice, I guess. So, it's going to be good. I guess a couple of tips to finish off. If you own a block of land and, you are thinking about or thinking about getting a house and land package, please, I've always said this, and I know, Colin, likewise yourself, but please come in and talk to a new home consultant at a builder or multiple builders about the block of land and how that, the house design you're considering is going to be impacted by that block of land. Previously it's been a lot about fall, fill, these sort of things, neighbouring properties, double stories around you that could impact, how you can build that home. You've now got to consider moving forward how the orientation is going to impact the 7-star requirements on that home. So, certainly get in and chat to the builder before you purchase that block of land, just so that you can be guided in the right direction around how that's going to work, and is it going to be the right fit for that block of land. And often it might not work on one side of the street, but directly over the road it'll work really, really well over there. So we can certainly help guide you in that respect. We touched on it earlier, but certainly the industry's gone through some challenges over the last 2 to 3 years around the home builder grant, and we don't want to be back in that same position. So we'd certainly be encouraging you, if you're thinking about building, get in sooner rather than later and start having these conversations if you're wanting to avoid this costing, that's coming up. because you don't want to be at that bottleneck again. So it's better to, take some control over that yourself and help spread that work. It'll get your job to site sooner. You're not going to have as many headaches, etc. And we'd certainly encourage you to get out over the next, 2 to 3 months and start talking to your builder and start making some decisions if you want to avoid those costs. So, again, if you're keen to take up on 7-star and have the livable housing components in your home, hold off by all means. We're not pressuring either way. But if you're trying to avoid the cost impeding, then jump in sooner.
Yep. Yes, well said, Daz. Good point. To finish off, guys, we just want to make it clear again that these are proposed changes. They're not yet finalised, but the indicators are that they're effective as of the 1st of October. So take everything we said into consideration based on that date. We, I guess, speaking for myself, I personally hope and really do believe that the best part here would be that all the paperwork and the requirements are finalised first and foremost before builders are given a final date to go and apply those things. I think having a 6-month period there is just too short. I would, given what builders are going through at the moment, I'd be really, really keen to see this pushed out 12 months, hopefully, something like that, just to give them a little bit of breathing room and a bit of space, and perhaps there's a reason for them not coming out and doing that, because a lot of builders would put it at the bottom of the list potentially as far as getting ready for it, Darren. But I think we're in a really unprecedented time, and it would be a good option to let builders just get through this rather than having to focus on the additional cost, stress, pressure of trying to comply with all these requirements this year. My view only. For sure. What about you, Taz? Yeah.
I think also, taking into place the consideration of the customer as well. If you go and add, let's call it, I'm just going to throw some really rough numbers, but 20 to 30 grand to a home to have it comply with these requirements. And it's going to be probably somewhere in that ballpark. Right now, the cost of living, people's borrowing capacity, etc., are all pretty challenging. And, certainly for first home buyers, adding another 20 or 30 grand to the cost of building a home right now is just making it less and less, a chance that they can even get into the market. So delaying that, and if we see some interest rates fall, you might find that the cost that's impeded in 12 months' time will be offset by a lower mortgage repayment, that all of a sudden, you can actually afford it, because people live, day to day, week to week, month to month for the most part, and they want to know what it's going to cost them on that next repayment. Not the 30 grand's really relevant, but the next repayment's probably more relevant. So as interest rates tip to come down, it probably makes it a little bit easier to stomach as well.
Yep. Yes, and within that price increase, another factor as a result of VMIA and Porter Davis and the insurance component is that the cost to provide insurance is probably going to go up substantially. It's another cost that people are going to have to factor in. It might, I think that's 2 or 3K now, roughly, a builder puts in and accounts for or pays for insurance, and it might go three times that amount very shortly as a result, just to help get through. So that's going to be passed on as well. So we were just mindful of the current state of the industry and really supporting our builders so they get through it, and which if they get through it, then clients get through it, and clients are happy and trades and suppliers are happy too. So I think that's at the core of what we're saying. So yeah, just to finish this up, guys, I want to say thank you so much for listening to our podcast again. We're really pumped because now we're out there live, and it's got some pretty good feedback so far. Yeah, we've got a website there, Home Building Hub. You can go to that, leave us a topic or a question idea if you would like, and please share the podcast as Darren said at the top. That's the fee. Share the podcast if you like it, and also if you are enjoying the topics, then please give us a 5-star rating on whatever platform you're on. So it might be Spotify, it might be Apple, etc. And other than that, Daz, anything to add to finish off?
No, thank you. Really appreciate you listening in. Hopefully you got some value out of today's content.
Yeah, beautiful. Good on you guys. Thank you. We'll see you on the next episode. See ya.